I botched something. 10-12, welcome back. Daily Show hitting you here on a Wednesday, and I almost got Eric's name right. See, whenever I guess, I'm wrong. I should have asked. I never do that. Eric, how are we doing this morning, man?
I'm doing very well, CJ. Thanks.
Well, and fill me in on this, the Runnin Redbirds, huh? I got to ask, just because, I think, especially after yesterday, folks are a little bit, perturbed with the current state of the union.
Sure.
And maybe are just ready for a general manager or a president of a club to maybe go away, and maybe the manager too. But in the 80s, we had a lot to be excited about.
We sure did. Yeah. That's right. I think it's good to look back at those more better times
Positive,
in our team's history at this point. Yeah, I was at the game last night, and it was not pretty.
No. I think at one point in time, even one of the other players just started crying for us. They were like, "Man, I'm sorry." Eric, fill me in. How did you get this idea to write about the Runnin Redbirds?
Yeah, well, I grew up watching Whitey ball in the 80s. Grew up here in Alton, a big Cardinal fan. And started doing some writing a few years ago for the Society for American Baseball Research. Mm-hmm. And I wrote some articles about some of my favorite players growing up, and that kind of led me to really dig into the 1982 season and ultimately this book.
Really cool. Now, how long did it take to kind of formulate it and structure it? Because it's I'm sure pretty difficult, to write something like this, because it's like, where do you start,
Exactly, yeah. It took me about a year, and it covers basically when Whitey took over the team in 1980 through the last out of the World Series in 82. So there's a lot of ground to cover. Mm-hmm. Dug into a lot of newspaper archives, interviewed some players, read some books. So basically any information I could find out about that season.
Now, when did he become the general manager of the team?
So he took over as manager in 1980, right. And then at the end of that season,
they made him general manager.
So he had, for a time, both roles of field manager and general manager.
Do you think that helped the team a little bit to know, to have the manager kind of on the pulse of it and going, here's the guys I want, not the front office?
For sure, yeah. And Whitey, he was a total visionary.
Yeah.
He built the team for the ballpark. It was this huge stadium with AstroTurf, and he basically got speed guys who could cover the ground and steal bases and totally revamped the roster.
Did you get a chance to talk with Whitey before the book came out?
I did, yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to interview him really early on, and he actually got to read the book.
That's cool.
Which was really cool.
Did he give his approval?
He did, yeah. I got a call from him back in March, actually, and he... Yeah, said it was very accurate, and he really enjoyed reading it. So that was one of the better phone calls I've ever received in my life.
Man, that's awesome. Well, and talking about the team, because the folk, all of the folks that were around in the 80s to watch that and all the fun that came with it, they got to see that glimpse, on the field and got to see the result. But were there any intricacies in just kind of the days to day of the Cardinals in the 80s and just kind of how they operated without the public there, in practice, traveling, all those fun things?
Yeah, it was a different time for sure. So totally different style of baseball than what we see today. It was totally built on speed and defense. Their pitchers hardly struck out and had the lowest strikeout rate of any team in the league. Their offense hit the fewest amount of home runs of any team in the league. They only hit 67 home runs in 82. So
wow,
totally different time.
Who had most of the home runs in 82?
George Hendrick led the team with 19. Yeah,
that's incredible.
Yeah, and there was only one other player in double figures.
Really?
Yeah, Darryl Porter.
Wow. Well, and what I think's really cool about the 82 or just the 80s Cardinals in general, it's a real team. I mean, it's not just one guy kind of putting it on his back. It's not two starting pitchers carrying the season or a good bullpen. I mean, it was a complete village that made up this great dynasty almost.
Oh, that's exactly right. Yeah, they really didn't have any superstars. They had Ozzie, who's a Hall of Fame shortstop, but they didn't have any big mashers like some of the other teams out there, like Reggie Jackson. They didn't have a Reggie Jackson or a Mike Schmidt, no guys like that. And their pitching staff didn't have like a Steve Carlton or Nolan Ryan. They just had guys who threw strikes and kind of let their defense do the rest.
Now, did the guys like Whitey? Outside of the baseball game, was there a good morale with him and the players?
Totally, and I think that's part of what made him so successful. Is he was very good at communicating with his players. I talked to a couple of guys that played on the bench that year, Mike Ramsey and Dane Orge, and they just had glowing things to say about Whitey and how well he communicated. He would always let them know, a couple days in advance when they were going to play. And then during games, he was always a few innings ahead of the other manager. He could see what was going to happen in the game and was prepared for it.
That's really cool. And when you're writing this, how much of it is, how difficult was it? Because if you're a fan of the team, when you're writing this, I'm sure you're like, well, man, how am I not completely, subjective to this? How do I make sure it's not just my, highlights of the team? What were the difficulties of kind of navigating those waters?
Yeah, so everything I have in the book is based on fact. And I cite hundreds of newspaper articles and books and interviews. So none of it's really my opinion. It's just all, this is what happened in the season. This is how it happened. And this is what these guys had to say about it.
That's really cool. Well, and what I think is really fascinating about it, too, is there's so many folks that, whether or not they're huge Cardinals fans or they're just kind of with St. Louis people, everyone connects to that team in that decade, really, with the Cardinals in some way, shape, or form.
Definitely, yeah. That era, I think people still look back so fondly on, and that was why it was so tough to lose Whitey. But a lot of what I do in the book too is I go into the backstories of some of the players and Whitey's story as well. So it's not just the on the field action, but it's, who are these guys and where did they come from?
Well, and that's getting back to earlier. That's what I kind of meant, because that's what I find the most fascination with. Because it seems like these were just a group of really good guys, that just enjoyed playing, but also just enjoyed having fun a little bit too.
Exactly. Yeah. And I enjoy kind of telling the human interest story of the game.
What's the most fascinating story for you whenever you were kind of doing your research, putting this book together? Was there one that kind of just went, man, I've never heard of that before? Or are you even sure this is real? Am I being ribbed? Like, what's happening here?
Yeah, I could go in so many directions with that. Joaquin Andujar, he was probably one of the more colorful characters on the team. Some of the quotes he had back in the day were just so off the wall. And, he had grown up in poor conditions in the Dominican Republic, and his story is pretty fascinating. So kind of just digging into his background was really neat.
Well, and coming up this weekend on Saturday at Jacoby Arts Center, we have a chance to come over and kind of meet you a little bit, learn more about the book. And what can folks expect over there at Jacoby Arts Center? It starts at 11 a.m. It runs until 1 p.m., where we can kind of celebrate the launch of this book.
Yeah, so basically it'll just be me and a table of books, and I'm looking forward to meeting some Cardinal fans and having some friends and family come out. And it's open to the public. I'll have books for sale for $25 each, and happy to sign them and talk some baseball. And I have a second book too, which just came out as well. So both books will be for sale.
Really cool. And with that being said, how did Whitey get the name White Rat? Was that before the Cardinals?
Yeah, this is
Was
actually,
it really?
Yeah, it dated back to when he was a player in the minor leagues, actually.
No kidding. I'll be darned, because I'm like, did we give him that? Like, how did that? Because he really, I don't know, I didn't live, in the 80s, but it seems like he was kind of, he got in your face a little bit, but he was a pretty kind of mild-mannered guy compared to some of the, the New York manager back in the day, and the Billy Martins of the world and the Earl Weavers, you know?
Compared to those guys, he was pretty mellow, but Whitey could certainly be outspoken when the time called for it.
Now, when did the Gary Carter flip-off happen? Was
Gary
that
Templeton?
Gary Templeton, sorry. When was that?
That happened in 81.
So is that covered in the book a little bit?
It is, yeah, absolutely. Because that ultimately, is what part of led to Templeton being traded for Ozzie Smith, who, of course, was a key member of the 82 team. So that's all covered in the book as well.
Man, I wish I could have been there that day. That's the way going back in my sports time machine to be there to see Whitey Herzog pulling somebody off the field. That would have been wonderful. Who was the most fascinating interview for you when you're getting this book put together?
Definitely Whitey.
Was it?
Yeah. Just being able to talk to him, and this was a couple of years ago when I spoke to him, and he was like a razor sharp. He was still at that time, watched every game, and he could recall things that happened back in the 80s as if it was yesterday. So that was really cool. And then Dane Orge, one of the heroes of the 82 World Series, got to talk to him. So just like hearing his thoughts of Game 7 and winning it all, that was really cool too.
So I think Bruce Sutter owes all of us an apology too, because for my generation anyway, Because when you see the highlight, it seems like this guy's throwing gas at 98 miles an hour. No, that was a rarity for a high fastball, wasn't it, for Suter a little bit?
It was, yeah. I think I heard Ozzie being quoted as saying like Bruce's fastball topped out in like the high 80s. He more relied on his split-fingered fastball,
right,
which had this sort of sinking movement, rather than just a like straight fastball.
That's every time I watch it, because I remember having a conversation when I was in the St. Louis station about some of the guys, and I'm like, man, he couldn't throw for anything.
Yeah.
I was like, really? 'Cause when you're a kid, you see the highlight, you think this guy's just their flamethrower out there.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, and I wanted to talk with you a little bit about Season of Shattered Dreams. This is fascinating. I didn't know too much about this. Now, it's a true story of a minor league baseball team in a tragic bus accident. Fill me in on this.
Yeah, so this is a story I had never heard about either until a few years ago. I live out in Washington State now and heard about this story. And basically it was the 1946 Spokane Indians minor league team was traveling west across the state for their next series in Bremerton near Seattle. And the team's bus crashed in the mountains, killed 9 players, injured 6 others. To this day, it's still the deadliest tragedy in the history of American professional sports. And a lot of people don't know the story. And the players involved, they had this fascinating backgrounds. A lot of them had just fought in World War II.
Yeah.
Some of the survivors went on to have careers in baseball, including one guy who managed Hank Aaron in the minor leagues.
Wow. That's really cool.
Yeah, so lots of connections and in the book, and looking forward to bringing this story to light.
That is, well, and I think that's going to be one that's really fascinating for me to try to get my hands on a copy of, because I like to learn about things I don't know about too. And is there a way for folks? I know you have a website, or is your book available on the website, or do they have to go to Jacoby Arts on Saturday to purchase?
So you can find the book anywhere. You can buy books online, such as Amazon. My publisher is Roman, ROWMAN.com. And then, of course, I'll have books at the signing on Saturday.
Now, I got to ask you, what's the future looking like for you in writing? Because it seems like you aren't slowing down anytime soon here, Eric.
Well, yeah, I wrote 2 books in 2 years, and now both of them have come out within a matter of months apart. I haven't decided on a 3rd book yet, just kind of soaking in the process of having these 2 releases and enjoying all that comes along with that. But I'm sure I'll write a 3rd one at some point, probably revolving around baseball.
Now, have you had any cool conversations about this yet? Someone just reaching out going, man, I just saw that this book's coming out. I'm excited. Have those happened yet?
I have, yeah. Some, including like family members of some of the people who were involved in this incident from nearly 80 years ago. I had a signing in Spokane, Washington a few days ago, and a guy who was 91 years old came out, who was actually at some of these games in 1946 and remembered some of these players. So just like talking to somebody like that.
That's living history. I mean, that's really cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man. Now, did he say it was pretty accurate? Did he like it?
So he actually came and picked up a copy of the book.
We got to wait feedback.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Now, are you going to look to stay more in the sports world, or are you ever looking to maybe do something in a nonfiction or a fiction side of things, or in more of a novel piece?
Yeah, definitely nonfiction's more my cup of tea. But I would certainly be interested in a good non-sport story if I came across one that I thought needed to be told. I'm big into music too, so maybe something like that.
One final question for you on this book: did Keith Hernandez's mustache was it just as bad as it was as it is today? Was it always that rough?
I'm pretty sure he's had the same mustache from his Cardinal days through Seinfeld and today. So, yeah.
That's great. Well, and that's why I to talk to you about this, because there's so many different takeaways that the reader's going to have, because there's I'm sure so many folks are going to start reading it and not necessarily reading it and remembering the players and go, oh yeah, that did happen, but going, man, I remember when I was sitting next to Grandpa watching or listening to Joe Buck talk about Jack Buck talk about the game. Julie's gonna yell at me. Talk about the game, or broadcast the game, and then some of those feel good things, those nostalgia pieces, and I think that's what's really cool about this book.
Yeah, I think baseball for Cardinals fans is so important. It has those family and friend connections. We can all kind of look back and think of those days where we were maybe, in my case, sitting on my grandpa's patio listening to Jack and Mike call the games, or going to games. back in the 80s with my parents or friends. So yeah, I think that's a big part of it for me, is just the nostalgia and reliving those sort of glory days of not only baseball, but those good memories. One
final one for you, sorry. What's your favorite moment of the Running Redbirds? Not the book, but the entire team. Was there one moment that you go, man, this is what sold me?
Wow. My favorite player from that era is Willie McGee. And his performance in Game 3 of that World Series was just incredible. Willie was a rookie that year. He was not even on the roster when the season opened, and he had one of the best games of any player in World Series history. He robbed a home run, hit 2 home runs that day, and that really turned the series. That was in Milwaukee when the series was tied 1-1. So that one kind of stands out to me as one of my favorite moments of that season.
Really cool. Well, folks, you can go hang out with Eric this Saturday at Jacoby Arts Center from 11 a.m. until 3 p.m. right over here on Broadway, where you can pick up a copy of the Running Redbirds or the other book, which is just slipping my mind, the Season of Shattered Dreams. Sorry, it keeps flashing back and forth, so I was like going from Running Redbirds and seeing all the details, but the Season of Shattered Dreams, which I will be getting my hands on a copy eventually, about the tragic bus crash involving the Spokane Indians. All of this is on the pipeline for Saturday. You can stop by, ask Eric some questions, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone has about the books and my research process and all that.
That's great. And you can also get more information on, learning about the author, maybe getting a signed copy, maybe going online and sharing some of his work with more of the public and making sure we all know about everything. And Eric, it's been fun talking with you for about 20 minutes. I hope it all goes well, and we'll see you Saturday.
Thanks, CJ. We appreciate it.
10:28's the time, a little bit of change. We'll take a quick break here, and Steve Pegram, Got Faith. We are joined by him right after this.